Let's bring in Velshi now. He is the host of MSNBC's Velshi, which airs weekend mornings on MSNBC. And he's hosting a special virtual town hall on the COVID economy this morning. it is great to have you. We're so glad you could join us. Let's talk about the big picture here. These job losses staggering, and it's really illustrated in today's New York Times, which literally shows the unemployment dropping off the page, higher than 14%.
Yep.
I think a lot of people want to know, as bad as this is, do we need to brace for it to get even worse?
Yeah, look, as Jeff said, Kevin Hassett at the White House saying it's going to get worse. I've seen a few economists saying this is as bad as it gets, but that doesn't actually make sense because the way these numbers are arrived at means that there's a calculation that's done in the middle of April. It sort of stops around the middle of April. So any jobs that were shed from April 15th to May 1st were not measured here. So we're talking about 20.5 million jobs lost in April, plus 770,000. Actually, it was more like 840 lost in the month before. So we know that there are more jobs than this lost. The unemployment rate itself is 14.7%. But again, we've got the end of April, and we've got all those people who are not actively looking for jobs who don't get counted in there. So the estimate of what that real number is already is over 20%, and we're probably going to see worse next month.
So, a lot of those people who aren't counted are presumably those furloughed workers, the people that think they may have a job to return to at some point. Should we expect those jobs to return anytime soon?
To some degree, think about the airlines, right? They furloughed a lot of workers who they keep on pay until the end of September. But now the airlines say we're only going to fill the planes about 50%. So that's not profitable for airlines. Restaurants that reopen that have to have social distancing, that's not profitable for restaurants. So a lot of these companies, after that Paycheck Protection Program, the payroll money that they get from the government ends on September 30th, if business isn't back, they aren't going to be able to reopen, or they may be able to close after a few months. That's the problem, because this is as much a health issue as a psychology issue. We don't know how people are going to re-engage with the economy over the next few months before there's a positive treatment for coronavirus or a vaccine.
And let me follow up with you on something the president said. He said a recovery is just around the corner, and yet you have a number of polls which show Americans are more concerned about getting sick than they are about returning to work. So is a recovery just around the corner?
Not a chance. The fact is, as I say, this is psychology, right? Governors, and many of them can open their states, but there are a lot of people who say, while these transmission rates are high, while we don't know about this, while we don't know whether people who've had it have robust antibodies, while we know that people are asymptomatic, they are not going to movie theaters, they're not going to shopping malls, they're not going to casinos, many of them are not taking public transit. Until we are certain about the health implications of this, the psyche of the American consumer is under siege, and we are not going to see a recovery. I tell you this, friends, there will be a recovery. We always recover. The American spirit is amazing. We just don't know whether this is a year away or 2 years away or maybe even longer. An around the corner 2020 recovery is not a possibility.
Well, we hope that recovery is sooner rather than later. Velshi, thank you so much for your insights. And you can watch Ali's virtual town hall on the economy and COVID-19 with special guests Kevin O'Leary, Susie Orman, and Adam Grant. That's this morning at 9 a.m. Eastern, only on MSNBC.